TN News, this is Montana This Morning.
Good Friday morning. It's 5 o'clock. Welcome to Montana This Morning. I'm Victoria Hill. Thank you so much for starting your day with us. Our top story today takes us to Muscle County, where wildfires are expected to keep fire crews busy today. Residents of some 250 homes south of Roundup are back in their houses this morning. They were briefly asked to evacuate last night before firefighters were able to get control of the 500-acre fire, the Western Fire. Crews worked throughout the night and expect to have a dozer line around the fire this morning. In addition to that, 2 other fires sparked in the county. The Peterson Fire south of Melstone is burning in difficult terrain, and additional resources are heading that way this morning to fight it. No structures are threatened. Firefighters contained and controlled a 3rd fire near Queens Point yesterday. All were started by lightning. We're also learning about the 3,000-acre Bracket Fire burning about 24 miles north of Terry in Prairie County. It was reported Thursday afternoon. Federal, state, and county resources are responding. There's no word on what started the fire. Now it's time to get a check of weather with Miller, making lots of noise us on this Friday.
Put it over there.
It's just one of those mornings, Miller. It's Friday. We're excited for the weekend. But man, those wildfires, I mean, I think we were lucky enough to get as far, into the summer with as few as we've had. I mean, we have plenty, but you can smell it this morning here in Billings, that wildfire smoke. Yeah,
and unfortunately, it's going to be lingering all day today, so the air quality is not going to be the best, folks. Sorry about that. So if you suffer from asthma, you want to keep that in mind if you're out and about today. Outside of the smoke, the smelly smoke out there, it's a beautiful start here in Yellowstone County. We're sitting at 60 at the airport. Humidity's at 60%. Dew points at 46, winds out of the northwest at about 8 miles an hour. Quickly, let's crunch some numbers. Yesterday, 12 degrees above average. We hit 98. We're going to be trying to get back to average seasonal today as we are in the wake of a cold front. Overnight low pretty much on target yesterday. Top wind gust over 40 miles an hour. Could see more wind gusts today. We do have a marginal risk for severe weather in our area. I'll tell you about that coming up. No measurable rain yesterday. We're falling behind for the month. We're getting close to 4 inches in the hole for the year. On that note, the latest drought monitor came out yesterday, and all of Montana and northern Wyoming in some stage of a drought. Either you've not changed any or you've gotten worse. That just shows you how bad it is out there. And over the next 14 days, we're not looking at a whole lot of rain in the forecast. In fact, today may be it for a little while, and we'll tell you about that and tell you about that severe weather threat coming up here in just a bit.
All right, we're looking forward to hearing all about it. Thank you so much, Miller. I'll get back to news. Okay. Around this time last year, the state was just beginning to come out of lockdown, but 2 weeks after the 4th of July, COVID-19 cases took off. Q2's Janelle Slade brings us a look at the latest numbers and what local healthcare crews are expecting this year.
What a difference a year makes, or not. At this point last year, COVID-19 cases in Montana had just started to take off. Today, local experts fear round 2 is on the way.
Undoubtedly, the hardest part has been making phone calls to family members to tell them that their family members are dying.
Even after 5 years in the Billings Clinic ICU, nurse practitioner Lynn Gordy's voice cracks when she talks about the calls she's had to make over the last year and a half, a job that, as of late, is seeing an uptick.
I'm doing it a little less often, but I'm still doing it. So the phone calls don't get easier.
The latest data show Billings hospitals are averaging more than 21 COVID-19 inpatients a day. About a third of those patients are in intensive care. They're coming in younger and getting sicker sooner.
They're not casually ICU patients, right? These are really sick people that come and stay for a long time and have poor outcomes. We've ranged in the last couple weeks anywhere from 30s to 70s. These are all not 70 and 80-year-olds who are dying.
6 Yellowstone County residents died in June, and so far in July, there have already been 3. Yellowstone County Health Officer John Felton says with only 45% of the eligible residents vaccinated, the county is now averaging 15 to 16 new positive cases each day.
When you think about that, 16 cases a day in a community our size doesn't seem like many, but then you start doing the math, right? So 16 cases a day is 100 cases a week, is 5,000 cases a year. This thing is still here. It hasn't gone anywhere.
In fact, Felton says the COVID-19 variants are just getting stronger and will continue to mutate as long as residents refuse to vaccinate. Of the 33 Delta variants detected in Montana, 14 are here in Yellowstone County.
It's much more transmissible. People have gotten really sick with it. It does appear that for all the variants, the current vaccines do a good job of protecting against severe disease, hospitalization, and death. Not 100%, but better certainly than not getting vaccinated.
It's working. Okay. I would beg you to get your vaccine. I would encourage people to reach out to someone, maybe your primary care provider, somebody that you trust in healthcare, and get some real knowledge about that vaccine. And if you're on the fence, do it.
So then maybe she can eventually stop making those phone calls. In Billings, Janelle Slade, MTN News.
Meanwhile, Pfizer says it's now ramping up efforts to roll out a COVID-19 booster shot to help increase immunity. The company is also working on a newer version of its vaccine to target the Delta variant. That comes as the CDC director says more than 9 million Americans now live in parts of the country where COVID hospitalizations and deaths are spiking significantly among people who have not been vaccinated. In Tokyo, an uptick in COVID cases has forced Olympic officials to ban spectators. The Summer Games are set to begin in 2 weeks after being postponed last year because of the pandemic. And with a rapid rise of COVID infections, Japan's prime minister is putting Tokyo in a state of emergency for 6 weeks. That means residents are being ordered to stay home as the world's biggest sporting event unfolds around them. Continuing our coverage, search crews will have more ground to cover as they continue trying to find missing hiker Tatum Murrell in the Beartooth Mountains. The search was focused on a 15-square-mile near the West Fork of Rock Creek. But now, after finding no signs of the 23-year-old, rescuers will expand their search area. A National Guard helicopter took high-resolution photos from above the mountains last night. Those images will be used by ground crews to determine where they should look next. There's new scrutiny over Northwestern Energy's proposal to build a gas-powered power plant in Laurel. MTN's Mike Dennison tells us why.
Northwestern has been saying for many months it needs more of its own power resources to supply its 380,000 Montana electric customers. And in May, it asked the State Public Service Commission to approve a two-part proposal, 50 megawatts of battery storage and a 175 megawatt natural gas-fired power plant to be constructed in Laurel. Northwestern also plans to buy 100 megawatts of hydropower from a Canadian company. Northwestern Vice President John Hines says the plan is the first step toward dealing with growing demand for electricity in Montana and the region.
It's a source that's been taken for granted for a lot of years because we've had a surplus of generation in the West. But with the retirement of a lot of thermal generation and the growth of just number of people, I would call it a critical problem that has to be addressed.
Hines says the net increased cost of the plan for Northwestern customers is close to zero. But critics say they're not convinced the company chose the lowest cost option from a group of bids, and that Northwestern isn't providing enough information on the alternatives it rejected.
We're saying, what were the assumptions that Northwestern was using to come to this requirement in the first place? They're saying we need so much capacity. Well, what were they actually looking at?
Trinell represents a group advocating for more renewable power and less consumption. Hines says the company used an independent consultant to devise its power proposals to best meet the needs of customers and the company. But Trinell's client and others wonder if Northwestern may have stacked the deck to choose the more profitable natural gas plant. The cities of Bozeman, Helena, and Missoula, which want to move toward exclusive use of renewable power, also are not happy with Northwestern's choice of a gas-fired plant. They say locking in a fossil fuel burning plant for 30 years is bad for the environment and consumers' pocketbooks.
Technology is advancing at such a rate that we're convinced that renewables will be the preferred option under any scenario within a decade. And certainly within 3 decades, it'll clean the clock of natural gas or any other fossil fuel burning resource.
Hines notes that Northwestern already gets 2/3 of its power from renewable sources, better than many other utilities nationwide.
We're proud of that. Like I said earlier, that's a significant change from where we were 10 years ago and certainly where the rest of the country is right now.
The case before the PSC will involve many months of testimony, hearings, and deliberation before a final decision is made, probably next year. And another case involving the renewable power debate and the three cities is on the horizon. We'll talk about that on Monday. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Mike also tells us Bozeman, Helena, and Missoula are proposing to have 100% net renewable power consumption by 2030 for consumers in their metro areas. The new back-in parking method in downtown Billings seems to be a challenge for some. Billings city engineers say a study determined it was time to get rid of one-ways, bring back 2 lanes, and of course change the way we park. While it takes some time to get used to, the study shows back-in parking creates a safer position for people to get back into traffic and makes it safer for people to get out of their vehicle. If you ask downtown business owners, though, drivers are still in a bit of an adjustment period.
The first couple of days was total pandemonium, total chaos. There were as many people pulling in as there were backing in, and it just looked like one big, huge mess.
I actually think it's going to help the downtown Billings businesses because we got 2 ways of traffic for people to see our businesses now instead of one way, which a lot of people avoided the one-way streets.
Area business owners say there's already been much improvement since the parking method was implemented. And topping national headlines this morning, President Joe Biden is defending the decision to withdraw the military from Afghanistan. The White House now says most U.S. personnel will be out before September. As CBS's Tina Kraus reports, the president says the benefits of staying there aren't worth risking more American lives.
The U.S. is speeding up its exit from Afghanistan after nearly 2 decades of fighting. President Biden said it's time to end the conflict.
I will not send another generation of Americans to war in Afghanistan with no reasonable expectation of achieving a different outcome.
Yesterday, the White House said the Pentagon is aiming to have most personnel out of the country by the end of August. The deadline had been September 11th.
The United States did what we went to do in Afghanistan, to get the terrorists who attacked us on 9/11 and deliver justice to Osama bin Laden. We did not go to Afghanistan to nation build.
The military withdrawal of the U.S. and its allies comes amid a Taliban resurgence. It currently controls about 1/3 of Afghanistan's provinces and is pushing to expand its territory. Officials have acknowledged the risks of pulling out.
Worst case, civil war, breakdown, fracturing the government, fracturing of the army, that's very possible.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham called the decision to leave Afghanistan a, quote, disaster in the making, and predicted it would lead to the reemergence of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. The U.S.'s longest war has claimed nearly 2,500 American lives and wounded more than 20,000. Tina Kraus, CBS News.
After the drawdown, up to 1,000 U.S. troops are expected to be stationed in Afghanistan. Most of them will be assigned to protect the American embassy and the airport in Kabul. President Biden and Vice President Harris are trying to tackle voting rights issues. On Thursday, they announced a $25 million expansion of the Democratic National Committee's initiative, countering efforts to make voting more difficult. The pair also met privately with leaders of several civil rights organizations to highlight their push to expand voting rights. At least 17 states have enacted new voting laws, and many feel they are designed to restrict voting access for minorities. 2 Haitian Americans are among more than a dozen suspects arrested in connection with the assassination of Haiti's president. One of the men claimed to be a former bodyguard at the Canadian embassy in Haiti. 17 suspects have now been arrested, 3 others have been killed, and 8 remain on the run. The suspects' ages range from 35 to 55 years old. At least 6 of the suspects in custody are retired members of Colombia's army. Back here at home, a night for survivors, warriors, caregivers, and those no longer with us. It's the annual Relay for Life of Yellowstone County, and it's happening tonight. This year's American Cancer Society event is a bit of a shift back to normal after last year's event was a cruise down 24th Street West. Taking place at the West High Track, the survivors will get to take their lap, followed by the cruise. The survivors lap happens at 6, and you're encouraged to gather along the outside of the track to cheer them on. Opening ceremonies will follow along with announcement of the teams. Then at 9 o'clock, the luminaria and caregiver ceremony takes place. The closing ceremony will happen at 10:30. The final fundraising announcement will be made on radio station Planet 106.7, followed by the fireworks at 10:45. Everyone's encouraged to decorate their vehicle for the cruise down 24th and show their support.